Hello everybody, I'm back with another Blender tutorial. I know I've been gone a while, I've just been having problems recording tutorials recently. Just everything going wrong. But, I think I've got it all working now, and I am going to make a tutorial for all the beginners out there that are watching my channel, because I know there are a few of you that I've talked to that just want to be able to model something. And the best way, at least for me to learn, was to actually make something. The first thing I made in Blender was like a really basic rocket ship, and that's an old tutorial that's way outdated. But today I'm going to show you how to make a Roman gladius. Why? Because I've been playing Rome 2 a lot, and it's really fun. I'm not being sponsored, by the way, by anybody. I've just been wasting all my time on that game recently. Turn on my screencast key so you guys can see what I'm doing. But without further ado, let's get started. The other reason I wanted to do this style of sword, other than I've thought gladii were cool for a long time, was it gives me the chance to use a modeling tool that I feel is really underused in Blender. So we are going to add in a Bezier curve, and then we're going to tab into edit mode. Hit A to select both of them. RZ90. SX -1. There we go. And now we just need to make the profile of our grip. And select the center one to move them all, or you can select the handles to rotate it like that. And the handles also control the fall off amount of your curve. So I'm going to move that one down toward the center. RZ -90. RZ90, didn't need the minus. And now if you want to add in another handle in between two, you just select the two that you want to handle between and hit W, subdivide, and then you have your second handle. Bring mine up, there we go. Now just make the profile by hitting E to extrude and rotating. Scale that one down. E, E, E. And that was the last one that I wanted. That doesn't come out quite enough. It's a bit too harsh. And now we just make the bottom. Okay, and there is the profile of our grip. And now to turn this into a mesh, we are going to add in a screw modifier, and we want it to rotate around the Y axis. Okay. And now if you see this weird shading going on, first of all, turn on your matte cap so that you can see shading, like odd shading, better. It just makes it a bit easier. I'm using the white. You can use anything that's more comfortable or looks better to you. But to fix it, just turn it on the negative angle. So currently it's at 360, and the normals, which are the back sides of faces in 3D, are flipped to the outside. And to fix that, we want it to rotate around in the opposite direction. So it's negative 360. Okay, there we go. You may be thinking, oh, that's way too big. That doesn't look good at all. Well, the beauty of this curve modeling technique is that you can edit your curve after the fact. So that you can make whatever shape you want and see the results. Update real time. Okay, I'm just gonna add in, just fix that up a bit. Whoops. It's still a little too fat for me. So I'm going to bring these in. There we go. Okay, looking pretty good. Bring that down. Okay, I'm liking the way that looks. Just gonna bring this one closer to the center, give it more of a point. And there we go. And now if you hit Z, you can see the geometry that it's going to create. And you might notice that there are a lot of polygons, or polys. Those are the number of faces. You can turn those down by turning the number of steps down, and it will get rid of those vertical lines, some of them. But I'm going to leave mine pretty high resolution. I just want one going down the center. Makes editing later a bit easier. And now to turn this into a mesh, you can't just hit apply on a modifier to a curve. You have to hit Alt-C, mesh from curve. And now it is an editable mesh. Okay. Also, the next thing, after you revolve a curve, there are going to be holes at the top and bottom. You can Alt-select these edges just by holding Alt and selecting between two vertices and hitting F to cap the hole. Hit 1 to go in a front view and do the same thing on the back. There we go. And I'm going to hit Alt-0 to turn on proportional editing so I can scale that down some more. There we go. I'm liking the way that's looking. But I want this part to be a bit flatter to fit the blade a bit more. So I'm going to select those vertices by hitting Z and B for box select. S, Z, oh yeah, and hit Alt-O to turn on the proportional editing so that I get more of that shape. And now I want an inset for the blade at the front. So I'm going to hit Control-Tab Face and hit Alt and Shift at the same time, holding those, select a couple, and then hit C for circle select and select the inside. Now hit SYY0, hit Alt-O, turn off proportional editing, and hitting SYY0 scales them all onto the same Y plane. Actually, I want it to be a bit wider. Okay. Now hit E, bring it back, not too far. There we go. Now I'm going to select these faces up here and hit SY0 to flatten them out. Bring them up. Okay, there we go. We have a pretty good looking grip. Alt-O, scale that down. Right. Now I just want to add in some detail on the guard. So I'm going to hit Z, B, and select the center. And I hit Shift D to duplicate it. And I'm going to hit P and Enter for selection. And now I have a second mesh that matches the guard, or the grip, perfectly. That I'm going to hold Alt and select some of these center faces here so that I can add some of my own detail. Hit E, S, Shift, Y. Hitting Shift, oh yeah, turn off proportional editing first by hitting Alt-O. You can tell if it's on by looking at this button down here. Hitting E, S, Shift, Y. And hitting Shift and then an axis means that it will scale everywhere but that axis. I hit S, Y, Y. Well, that didn't work. Okay, there we go. That's looking pretty cool to me. Now I'm going to select the top and the bottom ring of faces and do the same. There we go. Because I want to give these raised parts a different material than the rest of the grip, just to give it a bit more interesting bits down there, I guess would be the word. Actually, it's looking a bit... yeah, it's fine. Okay, now we need to move on and make the blade. I'm going to make the blade on a second layer. Just going down there and clicking on that other layer. And then hitting 1 to go in the front view. Shift A, mesh, cube. And also, if you don't have a grid everywhere when you hit 1 or 7, you need to go into orthographic view. It should say front ortho up there when you hit 1. You toggle that on by hitting 5 on the number pad. Okay. Then just scale it down on the Z. Go into tab, hit Control R to add in a loop cut. And then pan around, make sure it looped all the way around, because sometimes it's weird. Usually if it's a simple object like a cube, it'll go all the way around. And I'm using left click as my default selection button on the mouse. If you're new, you can change that in the user settings under the input. Alright, now I'm going to go into face select mode, select the outside faces, hit SZ. There we go, but I'm not going to scale them all the way down. I'm going to leave them pretty big like that. Then I'm going to select the back two faces and hit delete faces, because those will get in the way later. I'm going to select the front two and bring that out a bit. Hit 7. Then hit E. Bring it up there. And then scale it down on the X. Oop, that was weird. Control Tab to go into edge mode. Select that top edge. Scale it down on the Z. Actually, if you want to get this perfect, you can go to Vertex Select, select the top 3 vertexes, hit SZ0, flatten those out, and do the same on the bottom, SZ0, and then select those two, hit 7, and bring it out to a point. I'm doing it this way rather than just having this taper down into an edge, because on a real sword, it'll come down, and then when the edge starts, there'll have been metal ground off where they ground out the edge, so it'll come down into another angle off of the first tapering angle from the center, if that makes sense. So now I'm going to create that edge by going into face select mode, holding Alt and selecting that ring of faces, and hitting E, S, X. Whoop. To bring it out on the x-axis, and then hitting Control Tab to go to the edge, bringing up that edge. You might have to scale these out on the X some more too. There we go. Oh, and then go to face select mode and hit SZ0. And so now, when we look at it, we have that second angle down into the edge. But now, we have 2 vertices occupying the same space around it. We can get rid of those by selecting everything, hitting spacebar to go into the search menu, and typing in remove doubles. And it'll say 9 vertices removed. And that removes any vertices that occupy the exact same space. So now, all these edges are just a single vertex. There we go. Our blade is basically done. But I want to make mine the more Spanish style gladius, which had a curve in the middle. It's just a bit nicer than the traditional Italian one that the Romans used. So to do that, just add in a loop cut, scale it down till about there, and hit Control B. That is the bevel tool, and I'll add in about 6 loop cuts. Bring it up there, hit Tab, and there we go. We have our taper. And then also, when I was looking at pictures of Gladii, they didn't have a harsh edge out into a point. They kind of smoothly transitioned. And to do that, we're going to use the bevel tool again. Alright, and there we go. We have our leaf bladed gladius. And this, I think, is still not quite perfect. There we go. There we go. Now we can shift select our second layer and scale it down to fit into our grip. And just hit SY if you want it to be longer. But I feel like that's too long now. Not really. Actually, I think this grip is still a little fat down here. So I'm going to hit Tab A, S, Shift Y. Just bring it down. And I'm going to do the same here. I forgot to turn on wireframe before I did that. And Shift Y. Because this looks like a sword for giants currently. And there we go. Also, you may notice that the origin point, that little orange dot, which things rotate around, is not centered to the mass of the geometry. You can hit that by hitting Control-Alt-Shift-C. Do some finger yoga at the same time, and hit Origin to Geometry. Just do that for all of your objects after you're done creating them. I actually want that pommel to come back out and be a bit bigger. Hit Alto to turn on proportional editing. Okay, there we go. Actually, I'm going to bring up that ring too. There we go. Whoop. And now it's good to save often, so hit Control S and create a directory. I have a file for Blender things, one for swords, and I'm going to create a new one called tutorial. Go into it, create a new one, Gladius tutorial. Call it tutorial sword. There we go. And then just hit save blend file. Okay, there we go. We have our model. Now all we have to do is add in some materials. I'm going to use the Cycles render engine just because it is the superior render engine that comes with Cycles. The Blender render engine is pretty outdated. Then I'm going to go into the compositing view. Change this to, well, after I render, it'll render down here when I do a test render. I'm going to go into the materials panel here and change this window to rendered. Also, as a side note, when creating metal materials, it's good to have something for the metal to reflect off. So I'm going to go to the World tab, click Use Nodes, and add in an environment texture. And I have downloaded a free HDRI. I'll put a link in the description to where I downloaded this one. And then I'm going to turn it to transparent so that it doesn't have to worry about calculating that, except for reflections. And now it is using the light from that panoramic image to light the scene. Alright, go back into the object mode. Go into solid, select my blade, go back into rendered, come over to the materials panel over here and hit new and call it blade or steel. Now I'm going to add in a mix shader and a glossy shader. Turn on the preview. Turn the roughness to 0 on the glossy shader. Turn that up. So it's got more of a mirrored finish. There we go. You have a pretty good looking steel. And because we have that second edge that we added, it looks like it really has an edge. And you can see the shading changes just a little bit. But we still want to make this just a bit better. So we're going to duplicate this and plug it into the second one and add in a Fresnel texture. I'm not really sure how you pronounce that word. And plug that into the vector. Now I'm going to turn that down a bit. If you don't know what a Fresnel does, I can just plug the diffuse into the output, and then plug the Fresnel into the color. And you can see it just highlights the edges that the camera sees. And the higher the value, the softer and softer it gets. Which is why I'm turning it down to just the edge. Plug that back into the surface. And the reason I'm using a mix of both diffuse and glossy is because a pure glossy is a bit harder to render, and you'll get some what are called fireflies, or I forgot the technical term for them. Anyway, it's like a small glitchy particle that the only way you can get rid of it is by turning up your sample rate and sending your render times into the stratosphere. So I'm going to leave it like that. I don't know, maybe we can get away with it. Oh, that's the wrong one. Yeah, you could probably get away with it with a simple piece of geometry like this that doesn't have much to reflect off of. But this also gives you a bit more control over how much reflectivity it has. Okay, and we have our blade. Now go back into Solid and select your grip. And I want my grip to be wood. So go back into Rendered, create a new one and call it Wood. And this is going to be a procedural texture, meaning it will work on any object you put it on. It doesn't have an image, and you don't have to UV unwrap anything to use it. I'm going to need another mix shader and another diffuse shader. The first diffuse I'm going to turn to a woody brown, sort of a darker brown, a bit lighter than that. And the second one is going to be a dark, nearly black brown. And I'm going to mix those with a wave texture. Take the factor out and put it into the factor of the mix shader. And you can probably already see that there's a problem here. It's just a bunch of bands. Well, you can fix that by turning up the distortion to make it look more like rings in wood. And also, I think this wood color is a bit, there we go. That looks a bit better. Maybe make it a bit lighter. There we go, I'm liking that quite a bit. And if you want to change the direction this wood is going, you can add in a mapping node and plug the vector into the vector, and you notice everything goes away. That's because it doesn't have anything to base this rotation off of. So we need to add in a coordinate node, texture coordinate, and take the generated out, put it into the vector, and now we can rotate it, or we can scale it on different axes. And it just gives you an amazing amount of control over it. But I like the way it looks quite a bit right now. The thing is, I don't want it to be here. I want that to be a flat black. So I'm going to add in another material to this object by hitting the plus button, new, and call it black, or BLK for short. Hit tab, hit control up to full screen that, tab, turn off the see-through mode down there, and face select. Once again, I'm just going to select those faces and then hit C. Oop. Sorry, the microphone's in the way, so it's hard for me to see the keyboard and I keep hitting the wrong buttons. I apologize for that. Okay, and after you have them all selected, hit Control up again to go back into the windowed mode. Select your black material, click the color, it's just going to be a diffuse, turn it to black and hit Assign. And it will assign that material to those faces. So that when we hit rendered, it's just black. And also, I want to create a gold material. Gold. Which actually, you can select your blade material and hit this plus button to create blade 001. That means it has duplicated the blade material and we can edit it without affecting the blade material. We can call this gold and change the reflective color to more of a yellow, and also turn the diffuse color to more of a yellow to create a gold material. And I am going to put that around the rim. Hit gold, sign of my guard. Hit render to see what it looks like. Well, it's pretty good. Also, I'm going to turn on the smooth shading for the grip, smooth. And I might add in a subdivision surface modifier just to smooth it out a bit. There we go, that's looking pretty awesome. Okay, now I want the grip to look sort of like a blue, maybe a stone or porcelain. So I'm going to give it a new material also, call it stone, but like a polished stone. So I'm going to add in another mix shader and another glossy shader and turn the roughness down again. But this one is going to have quite a bit more diffuse than the last one. Go into rendered. You can see what it looks like. And that is looking like a cheap holiday plastic ornament. Make it a very dark blue. Move it back down toward diffuse a bit more. Okay, and then I'm going to add in another material and select the gold material. Oh yeah, I forgot, it's called Gold 001 because I accidentally created that other gold. And I am going to make these little raised areas gold. Oop. Dang it. Just does not want to select. There we go. I'm just holding Alt and Shift to select these loops. Sometimes it's easier to zoom in. A lot of the time it's easier to zoom in. Select all the things you want to be gold, and then hit Assign. Tab out, hit Rendered. There you go. That looks pretty awesome. And there you go. You have a Gladius. And now I'm going to go into my render settings. Go to sampling, turn it up to like 100. Just for this one. And then I'm going to go into the, what's it called? Scene window. I always forget what it's called. I just know them by their icons. And hit render image. Oh, I forgot to add a camera. First I'm going to add a camera. And then I'm going to zoom out. And while I'm in perspective mode, not orthographic, I hit Control Alt 0 to bring the camera to the view. And with the camera selected, you can hit G, middle click and drag, and just move the camera around the scene. Then I'm going to hit Render Image. It's going to render down here. There we go. That's looking pretty cool. Oop. I created a new material nowhere. And now I'm going to click the Compositing tab. Click Use Nose and add in an alpha over, plug it into the bottom, and make it not so pure white. There we go. Also, I'm going to come over here and turn the strength up to like 3. So that when it's rendered, it just turns up the amount of light in the scene. Maybe 2 or 3. 2. Okay, there we go. Just have to re-render that. There we go. And if you really want to make your scenes stand out, go into Color Management, Render View, click Film, and then you can select any of these film stocks that you like. I'm going to hit Control and use the scroll wheel to go through them to find one that I like. And it emulates film stock, real film stocks. And also, I want to give this another alpha over so that I can give it a vignette. And a vignette is where the barrel of the lens kind of cuts off the image a bit, and it just is a fuzzy black line that draws attention to the subject in the center, which is what we want. And to do that, plug it into the top, turn this to black, and then we're going to add in a mask. And we want an elliptical mask, which we're going to plug into the factor. Actually, this alpha over needs to come first. Also, I'm holding Control to cut these. It's just faster than dragging them out. And there we can see our elliptical mask. I'm going to drag it out to an area I like. Add in a invert node. And then I'm going to add in a blur node. I'm going to turn this up to like 12. There we go. Maybe more. Like 50. Just go crazy with it. There we go. 150 by 150 seems to be. Yeah. There we go. Actually, you can turn it down a bit. Just to bring some attention to the subject. And then go here and turn up the full render size, render image, and there you go. You have your finished sword. I hope this was helpful. Like and subscribe if you want to see more. And if you dislike the video, then dislike it and tell me why you disliked it in the comments. Also, if you turn up the resolution, you have to turn up the blur too. I don't know why. It's a weird scaling thing. But tell me why you disliked it in the comments below. And let me know what you want me to see next. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.